Hello guys and welcome back. So now that we have an understanding of how to prepare the geometry for destruction and fracturing, we're going to look at the fracturing process and how that works. So the way we do fracturing in Houdini is using a node called Voronoi SOP. And this node applies a Voronoi pattern to decide how to split the geometry. And the requirement for this Voronoi node is a geometry input and then a bunch of points, or the number of pieces you want to be the geometry split at. And so let's say I have these points here. The Voronoi algorithm will try to split this piece of geometry into areas where the point that we gave it is the center of that area. So for example, it will do something like this, and then it will try to make a second area where the second point is the center of it. So maybe something like that. And then it will do another piece here and another piece here and another one here. Okay? So this is the Voronoi algorithm. It requires a set of points and then uses those with the geometry to decide how to split it. But let's do that. Let's take a look at this in Houdini. So I'm going to create a geometry. I'm gonna dive inside and create a box. And let's make something like that, okay? And I'm going to take this geometry and scatter a few points on it. Let's say 50 points. So I just have those points on the surface. And I'm going to hit tab and type in Voronoi fracture. And the first input is the geometry to fracture, and the second one is the point for Voronoi cells. And so once I do that, it gives me back, if you look at it, nothing changed, but if you view the wireframe mode, you can see now it is split on multiple pieces. Okay? This node has a lot of properties. We're not going to be changing them. The default works quite well, but I'm going to go over them briefly. The first tab, I always leave this by default unless you run into some issues. You try to investigate the cutting method using this, but 99% of the time it works fine. The second option is to group clustering. It's called cluster, is to group pieces together to break a little bit more this pattern. We're not going to be using that. We're going to be using a different workflow. Interior details. This adds details to the interior. It basically subdivides the interior, and then you can add noise to it, to the interior edges, interior faces. We're not going to be using that. And then this grouping, by default it creates two groups. If I middle click, you can see there is an inside group which contains all the faces inside, and then an outside group which contains all the outside faces. And then this attribute section here is naming the pieces. So if I middle click, these pieces have a primitive name, and each of these guys, each of these pieces, all the primitives contained by it will have a name attribute that starts with a piece and then a number. So that's where it's coming from. And then what I'd like to do to visualize the result is use this visualize pieces, which will assign a random color to each one. Okay, cool. So the problem we have right now, there is a problem, and the problem is these points are only generated on the surface of the mesh. It's not generated. We don't have any points inside. While this wall, or this box here, has a volume. So we have to find a way how to scatter points inside the volume and then use those, because that's gonna give us much more interesting details. If we place points inside, it's gonna fracture it in more detailed way. So we need to convert this object into a volume. And so in the next video we're going to talk about VDB volumes and what a volume is in Houdini. Cool. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye bye.